At 3:08 p.m. on the 24th of November, 1971, a man who calls himself Dan Cooper hands a flight attendant a note on a Northwest Orient passenger jet cruising at 10,000 feet over Washington state. She assumes it is a phone number. She puts it in her pocket without reading it. He leans over and says, quietly, "Miss, you'd better look at that note." She reads it. Her hands stop moving. The note says he has a bomb. Who was this man? And how did he simply cease to exist? The year is 1971. America is exhausted. The Vietnam War is entering its 16th year. Unemployment is climbing. The counterculture of the 1960s has curdled into something harder and more cynical. Trust in institutions, the government, the military, the airlines is at a generational low. Commercial aviation is young and still finding its security footing. In 1971, there are no metal detectors at American airport gates, no bag, X-ray machines, no photo ID requirement to board a domestic flight. You walk up, you buy a ticket, you get on the plane. The system is built entirely on the assumption that passengers are who they say they are. Northwest Orient Airlines operates Flight 305 as a routine Portland to Seattle service. It is a Wednesday. The aircraft is a Boeing 727-100, a short-haul workhorse carrying 36 passengers and a crew of 6. The flight time is 30 minutes. Nothing about it is remarkable. Nobody at Portland International Airport that afternoon is watching for anything unusual. Nobody has any reason to. The man at seat 18C. He buys his ticket with cash. The name on the ticket is Dan Cooper, a name that belongs to no one, traceable to nothing. He is described later by the crew as a man in his mid-40s, dark suit, black tie with a mother-of-pearl tie clip, white shirt, dark sunglasses. He carries a black attaché case. He orders a bourbon and soda and pays for it. He is polite. He is calm. He does not draw attention. No one looks twice at him. Flight attendant Florence Schaffner is the first crew member he approaches. When she reads his note and looks up, he opens the attaché case slightly just enough for her to see what is inside. She later describes red cylinders, wires, and a large cylindrical battery. She closes the case and walks to the cockpit. And that was the last moment anyone on that plane felt safe. Cooper's demands are specific, precise. The specificity is the first signal that this has been planned carefully. He wants $200,000 in negotiable $20 bills. He wants 4 parachutes, 2 primary, 2 reserve. He wants a fuel truck standing by in Seattle to refuel the aircraft. And he wants the plane to fly to Mexico City after the exchange low and slow, below 10,000 feet, with the landing gear down. He gives the crew one instruction above all others: no tricks. The FBI is notified before the plane lands. Seattle-Tacoma Airport clears a remote gate. The ransom is assembled $200,000 in used 20s. The serial numbers photographed by the FBI before the bills are bundled. 4 parachutes are sourced from a local skydiving school. The exchange takes 90 minutes to arrange. Cooper waits. He orders another bourbon. He eats a steak dinner from the in-flight meal service. He tips. Nobody had ever hijacked a commercial aircraft and made it work. Cooper appeared not to know that. At 5:46 p.m., Flight 305 lands at Seattle-Tacoma. Cooper allows all 36 passengers and 2 of the 6 crew members to deplane in exchange for the money and parachutes. He keeps pilot William Scott, co-pilot William NORJAK, flight engineer Harold Anderson, and flight attendant Tina Mucklow on board. Tina Mucklow stays with him in the rear of the aircraft while the plane is refueled. She later describes him as courteous throughout. He offers her some of his dinner. She declines. He does not appear nervous. He asks technical questions about the Boeing 727, specifically about its rear air stair, a unique feature on the 727-100 that allows passengers to board and exit from a staircase beneath the tail while the aircraft is in flight. He already knows about the air stair. He asks about it anyway. That detail would take investigators years to fully understand. At 7:40 p.m., Flight 305 takes off again, heading south toward Mexico City. Flying at 10,000 feet, gear down, flaps at 15 degrees, airspeed reduced to 150 knots. Exactly as Cooper instructed. Two F-106 fighter jets from McCord Air Force Base are scrambled to follow at a distance without Cooper's knowledge. They fly above the 727 in the clouds, out of sight. At 8 p.m., a warning light illuminates in the cockpit. The rear air stair is being activated. Pilot Scott asks Cooper over the intercom if he needs assistance. Cooper says no. At approximately 8:13 p.m., a subtle but unmistakable pressure change ripples through the aircraft cabin. The rear door is open. 8:13 p.m. Cooper jumps. The pressure change tells the crew everything. Someone has gone out the back. They do not turn around. They do not investigate. They fly the heading Cooper gave them and say nothing on the radio that might provoke a response from a man who may still be on the plane with a bomb. At 10:15 p.m., Flight 305 lands at Reno, Nevada, the planned refueling stop. FBI agents board immediately and sweep every inch of the aircraft. Cooper is gone. So are the money and one of the 4 parachutes. The other 3 parachutes are left behind. One of them, investigators will note later, is a dummy training chute, non-functional. Cooper took the one real parachute that was available. Whether he knew which one was functional, or whether he simply got lucky, is a question that has never been answered. The jump zone is triangulated from the flight path data. Cooper went out somewhere over the Washougal River area of southwest Washington state, a dense, heavily forested wilderness in late November. Temperature at jump altitude, approximately -7 degrees Celsius. He is wearing a business suit and loafers. The FBI launches the largest manhunt in Pacific Northwest history. Over the following weeks, hundreds of agents, Army troops, and civilian volunteers comb the jump zone, helicopters, dogs, ground teams moving through dense forest. They find nothing. No body, no parachute, no briefcase, no money, no clothing, no evidence that any human being landed in that wilderness at all. The investigation is assigned the case name NORJAK Northwest Hijacking. It remains open and active for the next 45 years. Over the following decade, the FBI develops over 1,000 named suspects. Each one is investigated. Each one is eliminated. Richard McCoy Jr., a Vietnam veteran and skydiver, hijacks a United Airlines flight in April 1972 using an almost identical method. He collects $500,000 in parachutes from the aircraft. He is caught within days. The FBI considers him a strong Cooper suspect. He is eventually ruled out. His physical description does not match, and his alibi for the 24th of November, 1971 is verified. In 1995, a man named Dwayne Weber tells his wife on his deathbed that he is Dan Cooper. His wife contacts the FBI. Investigators test DNA from Weber's belongings against material found on Cooper's clip-on tie left behind on the plane. The DNA does not match. In 2011, a group called the Citizen Sleuths analyzes particles found on the tie under electron microscopy. They identify pure titanium particles of a type used exclusively in a handful of industrial and aerospace manufacturing facilities operating in 1971. The particle signature points to a man with specialized industrial knowledge, possibly a Boeing employee, possibly a military contractor. The FBI does not publicly confirm the finding. The case file grows thicker. The 10th of February, 1980, the money. 8-year-old Brian Ingram is on a family camping trip on the north bank of the Columbia River near Tennebar, Washington. He is digging in the sand at the river's edge. His hand closes around a bundle of deteriorated paper. He pulls out 3 packets of $20 bills, rotted, disintegrating, held together by rubber bands that crumble at the touch. The serial numbers are checked against the FBI's photographed list. They match 5,000 $800 of the $200,000 ransom confirmed. But the location makes no sense. Tena Bar is miles outside the calculated jump zone. The bills are buried several inches below the surface in a riverbank, not scattered by flood or current. How they got there, whether washed downstream over years, deliberately buried, or deposited by some other mechanism, has never been conclusively explained. The remaining $194,200 has never been found. After 45 years, over 1,000 suspects, and millions of investigative hours, the FBI formally suspends active investigation of NORJAK. They cite resource constraints. The case is not solved. It is not closed. It is simply set down. The man called Dan Cooper remains the only person in American aviation history to commit air piracy and never be identified. The file sits in a cabinet somewhere, still open, still waiting. Here is what the official narrative does not feature prominently. One of the 4 parachutes Cooper received was a non-functional training dummy chute, sewn shut, unusable, provided by mistake by the skydiving school, contacted by the FBI. Cooper jumped with one of the 2 real parachutes available. If he had taken the dummy, he would have fallen 10,000 feet with a bag of nylon that would never open. The FBI, in the chaos of assembling the ransom package in under 2 hours, did not verify that all 4 parachutes were functional before handing them over. The agency responsible for catching him handed him the means to survive. There is also this: the 2 F-106 fighter jets that followed, Flight 305 from Seattle, were flying above the cloud layer, in the dark, at a higher altitude than the 727. When Cooper jumped, the fighters were effectively blind. They saw nothing. They reported nothing useful. The most technologically advanced interceptors in the United States Air Force inventory in 1971 were positioned in a way that made it physically impossible for them to observe the jump. No one has satisfactorily explained why they were positioned there, instead of below the cloud layer where Cooper's exit point was visible. And the money at Tena Bar, the $5,800 found by a child in 1980, was located upstream from where the Columbia River's current would have deposited bills washed from the jump zone. The bills appear to have traveled against the flow of water. Some investigators believe the money was never in the river at all, that it was buried at Tena Bar deliberately by someone who was still alive 9 years after the hijacking and wanted to send a message, or close a loop, or simply remind the world that he was still out there. Nobody followed that thread far enough to find the end of it. B. Cooper did not defeat the FBI because he was a criminal genius. The FBI's own investigators have said as much. His parachute landing in a forested wilderness in November in a business suit at night had a survival probability that most experts put below 20%. He may well have died within hours of jumping. The money found at Tena Bar may have simply floated there over 9 years in ways the river hydrology does not fully support but cannot fully exclude. What Cooper exposed was not a flaw in one airline's security. It was the foundational assumption of an entire system that the ordinary social contract people maintain with institutions holds under pressure. That passengers are passengers. That the transaction of buying a ticket is a transaction between equals operating in good faith. He bought a ticket, he sat down, he ordered a drink. And then he reminded every airport, every airline, and every government agency in the world that the system had never actually checked. Every metal detector you have ever walked through, every bag you have ever placed on a conveyor belt, every boarding pass scanned, every ID verified, every shoe removed and sent through an X-ray machine, all of it exists because one man in a dark suit sat in seat 18C, ordered a bourbon, and waited to see if anyone was paying attention. Nobody was.